Yo, what up guys, Travic here, and today we got some absolutely bonkers news about Path of Exile 2. And I know a lot of people are like, oh my god, but no, we actually got some really good, important news that's actually worth sharing. If you haven't already seen, Path of Exile 2 has announced that they are giving us all 6 classes and all of their ascendancy information on Twitter last night. And I figure this is probably worth talking about because of something very important. And I've said this a couple times and I'll say this again. When you pick an ascendancy as it stands at the time of recording, you cannot change your ascendancy. So going into the Path of Exile 2 early access and playing your character, when you choose to ascend on your character, that's it. It has a very Last Epoch style of vibes where, like, if you want to re-roll or try a different ascendancy, you have to make a new class. And well, for me, well, that's not that big of a deal. I know to a lot of you guys don't really want to reroll. Now, going into early access, I'm still planning on playing the Monk. And while today's video is going to include a little bit of spoilers, I did kind of want to put this out there for anybody who's looking and deciding between what are the 2 Monk ascendancies they want to play. You know, it's going to feel, you know, if you don't really know that you're kind of locked in, or you don't really know what you want to do, and you get to that altar and you just sit there a little shell-shocked or stunned in typical Path of Exile fashion. Hopefully today's video gives you a little bit of like ease into what you want to do. Now, all 6 classes are available for you to look at. I will post a link to this forum post down below. You'll be able to, you know, click on it and explore to your heart's content. But I'm not going to be talking about any other classes right now. I'm not going to be spoiling anything for anybody outside of the Monk. And if you're curious about the other ones, I encourage you to go look, or if you want to talk about them down below in the comments and let me know what you're thinking about or what you're planning on trying. I'd like to hear your ideas, because as a chronic re-roller, I'm not gonna lie, man, I can't wait to try actually everything, because I've looked at some of these ascendancies last night, and let me tell you, there's 1 or 2 of them that really blow my mind. Now, for early access, like I said, I'm going to be starting a Monk. The Monk has 2 classes. There is the Invoker class and the Acolyte of Chayula. Both look as though they have 2 drastically different play styles and 2 extremely similar ones. So we're going to split this up, and we're going to look at the Invoker, and then we're going to look at the Chayula, and then we'll kind of like talk about maybe making a decision. Now, for me, I have mentioned this before, and I'll say this again. I love the Monk idea of a class. I love Monk in Diablo 3. I love Assassin in Diablo 2. Martial Arts Assassin is one of my favorite classes to play in Diablo 2 Lords of Destruction. And the idea that the Monk can maybe fill that role for me is very exciting. On top of that too, like, just the whole video that we've seen of Monk flipping all around, the whole beating enemies with a quarterstaff, having that cool flicker strike skill, I'm just completely sold. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, if you're watching this, are on the same, you know, that same train of thought or that same path. Now, Invoker Monk is probably going to be the 1 of 2, you know, probably going to be the easier of the 2 choices, I should say, to get started, simply because Chayula looks like it's going to need a lot more gear, but we'll get to that in a second. Invoker has some very interesting, strong passives so far. Going down the list in order, you know, the first skill, Lead Me Through Grace, says gain 1 spirit for every 6 energy shield on body armor, and gain 1 spirit for every 15 evasion rating on body armor. Cannot gain spirit from equipment. To me, this resonates with like current Trickster. If you've never played Path of Exile before, there is an ascendancy class called the Trickster, and it has a very similar kind of node on the ascendancy tree that just gives you a lot of benefits from having a certain type of body armor equipped on your character, and it makes it really strong. The idea, from my understanding in Path of Exile 2, a lot of our auras are tied to our spirit, so I'm wondering if there's like some crazy body armor combination that'll just let us stack a whole bunch of auras with Lead Me Through Grace. On top of that, the second node in Protect Me From Harm says that our evasion rating also grants physical damage reduction. Now, it's not like in Path of Exile 1 where all of our evasion rating is just converted to armor. This just says that we get to double dip with 40% less evasion rating. So I'm kind of like interested to see like if we're supposed to be building like an evasion / energy shield type of Monk, especially as an Invoker, to stack a bunch of auras and get a whole lot of physical damage reduction. These first 2 nodes they just seem just out of control. I don't know so much about the 40% less evasion rating, but overall, like, this seems, just from the tank perspective, insane. Just being able to equip a bunch of auras, you know, and stacking aura from this passive tree plus this just blows my mind. Our third skill, Meditate. Meditate says channels to recharge energy shield can overcharge your energy shield up to double its normal maximum. Channeling ends when you take damage or your energy shield is double its normal maximum. This skill cannot be used if your energy shield is already doubled its normal maximum or you have no maximum energy shield. Now, this is really interesting to me. This is like this weird charge up skill. I'm sure there are like really cool use cases for it, but I never see a world I'm not too sure of a world where you have the ability in Path of Exile to sit and charge this skill. Maybe if you know a boss is about to do some big attack, you can charge it off, or maybe the charging takes only like a second or two and it's not too bad and you can like weave it in out of boss attacks. But it's gonna be really interesting to see how this plays out, because I'm not really too sure in in the current world that I know of Path of Exile. I don't know how we're supposed to sit down and meditate in the heat of combat, especially during boss mechanics. But I can see a world where like you're doing the Maven memory game and she's charging the memory game and you're like charging up, or if like bosses have like slow telegraph mechanics or little RP sessions, you would be able to get this charge of meditate off. So it's gonna be really interesting to play with. I know I plan on trying it. I don't think I'm going to try it right off the rip, but after my monk is leveled and after I've tried a couple of things, I think playing around with meditate might actually be really strong, especially if we're pairing it with lead me through grace, where you just have tons of energy shield on your, on all of your gear. So I'm really interested in seeing how that plays out. Now, node 4 and 5 are really cool. They are I am the Blizzard and I am the Thunder, and these two respectively give the Invoker, I think it's like whole identity. The idea that the Invoker is a cold lightning type of hybrid is really cool to me, and it's very, it's very noticeable with the other second half of the tree. We can either take 10% of damage as extra cold damage on freezing enemy creates chilled ground, which is really powerful, or gain 10% of damage as extra lightning, 25% chance on shocking enemies to create shocked ground. Both of these in Path of Exile 1 are really strong. Chilled ground slows all their movement, all their actions, all their everything, and shocked ground makes them take just like tons of more damage. Now, I don't know if cold's gonna be better than lightning or lightning's gonna be better than cold, but the idea of slowing my enemies and making them take more damage from shock ground sounds pretty good overall to me. And well, I don't know, man. I'm just curious to see how the 10% plays out with everything and how we're gonna go about things, because it could be relatively really strong, especially like, just extra damage while you're trying to go through the campaign might not be a bad thing. Slowing the enemies while going through the campaign might not be a bad thing. Even just getting shot, like if you have like a good shock chance right off the bat, creating shock ground might not be the worst thing in the world. Now, those two nodes lead into the Unbound Avatar. Unbound Avatar, we have something very similar right now in current Path of Exile where we can play with the Warden Ascendancy, and the Warden Ascendancy has, this really cool skill where you just become unbound. You're this for so long, you do so much damage, and it is just a completely bonkers skill. And if that translates over into this and I Shall Rage, we're going to be in for a really pleasant treat. You're going to gain Unbound Fury by inflicting elemental ailments, which is the same as Path of Exile 1, with hits on enemies. Once you reach the maximum Unbound Fury, consume it to become unbound for duration, vastly augmenting your elemental prowess. In Path of Exile 1, I believe it's as soon as you hit 100 stacks, you can become unbound, and you could just start, for the X amount of seconds, you are just like completely more damage and just absurdly powerful. Now, unfortunately, we don't see any numbers on this skill tree, and we don't really see what's going on, but we have been told that we can buff the skills that this is giving us. So if we can add support gems to Unbound Avatar, it might just be completely insane, like actually insane. So I'm really curious to see how all of that plays out. I just have this feeling that Monk right off the bat is going to be just this powerhouse of damage, especially with Unbound Avatar and Elemental Expression. And you'll see when we get there, that skill is just off the charts as well. Now, going into skill 7, the Soul Springs Eternal, I'm not sure what meta skills gain 35% more energy means. I haven't deep dived the patch, you know, the data mine stuff. I haven't deep dive a lot of things. So I'm not really too sure what the whole energy thing is. I'm going to be very intrigued to figure out what that is. If you do know, please let me know in the comments down below. I'm curious what it is, but I haven't really done a whole lot of looking. I also don't really know what the meta skills are. I haven't really looked into that either. So if you have any information on that, I'd love to hear about it. Number 8, sunder my enemies. Critical hits ignore non-negative monster elemental resistance. Now this is really interesting because in Path of Exile 1 we can deal damage to the inverse of the monster's elemental resistance. So if they have 50, we have a 25% chance to deal damage as though the resistance was inverted, so it would be negative 50. So it's really interesting because this says ignore non-negative monster resistances. So every time we crit, it's just as though we hit and they have like zero resistances the whole time. So it's going to be really interesting to play around with, because then you can't invert the resistance of the enemy, but everything is already zero, and monsters with zero we've seen from Original Sin are really strong. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out in terms of damage. If it works how I think it's working in my head, it's going to be absolutely bonkers. And we've seen, if you've looked at PoEDB and, you know, the little bit of spoiler, if you've seen base staves or base quarterstaffs have a ton of crit on them already. So while Jonathan said getting to crit cap might be a little bit more difficult in PoE2, our weapons in themselves have a lot of base crit on them. So I can see a world where you are playing this Invoker crit monk, you're just, you know, shredding elemental resistances, making it zero, hitting these enemies really hard, becoming an unbound avatar, dealing more cold damage, stacking auras with Lead Me Through Grace, and just kind of like, it all seems to come together just absolutely swimmingly. Now the last skill, and scatter them to the winds, is the skill that made me decide that I probably want to play Invoker right off the rip. I mentioned earlier that I love playing Assassin in Diablo 2. I am a big martial arts assassin kind of guy, and I love, you know, Mosaic in D2. I love Phoenix Strike in Project Diablo 2, and this skill just for some reason to me resonates and reminds me a lot of that. This skill says create a fiery explosion of arcing bolts of lightning or an icy wave of projectiles. The chance for an explosion is proportional to your strength, a bolt proportional to your dex, and a wave proportional to your int. Create a fiery explosion, an arcing bolt of lightning, or an icy wave of projectiles. Now, breaking this down, it sounds like more strength will be fireballs, more dex will be bolts, and more int will be just a icy wave. So you have this character that, you know, triggers on a melee critical hit just like a barrage of different elemental attacks from fire, cold to lightning. And I can see my character gaining attack speed and just hitting and having a cycle of different elements just hit the entire screen. Very similar to the Mosaic Assassin. Like, so if you've never played it, Mosaic Assassin essentially hits and just a barrage of different elements fly across the screen. Now, the thing with elemental expression that I don't really know is if it will trigger them all at the same time, if it will trigger them individually, if it'll trigger them based on which is your highest attribute. Because currently I was talking to Discord and my buddy Blossom, and Blossom said he reads it as though it's based off your highest attribute. So there's a world where Monk becomes this like tri-attribute stacking, if assuming that's how it works, this tri-attribute stacking to just get all of these different elementals to explode at the same time. Now it's gonna, like I said, it's going to be really, really interesting to see if they all explode at the same time, if they just cycle through, how they cycle through. Does it go explosion, light, wave? You know, it's going to be really interesting to see. And it's a skill, right? It's a skill that can be triggered from a crit. So because it's a skill, do we get to add more support gems to it? Because if we can add support gems to this, it's going to be absolutely bonkers. Like, without a doubt, it's going to be absolutely positively bonkers. And I am sold. I am absolutely sold. Everything about Invoker Monk is just everything that I want from a character. It sounds great. I mean, like, even talking about it now, my cat has decided that, you know, she's gonna bless us with the monk is no way. Oh yeah, hello. How do you want to play monk with us? What? Ah, you little butt. Overall though, I am really excited for this class. I can't wait. Now, the flip side of the coin is we have the Chayula Monk. The Chayula Monk is a little bit different. It is on the other side of the coin. Instead of being lightning and cold, it is pure chaos damage. This is the class that I think is probably going to be insanely busted. And the reason I think this is because after looking over what it does, you know, before we got the ascendancies and looking at it now, I mean, like, it, it just seems like it's going to be crazy. To begin with, the Chayula Monk has Mana Leech as instant. So, like, depending, I guess, how hard we attack and how Leech works, Mana Leech being instant is just crazy. It's powerful. In Path of Exile 1, Leech being instant is one of the, you know, biggest defensive layers that you can do. You know, we play with instant Leech on a lot of different ascendancies. We do a lot of different things with instant Leech, and we only get 10% of it. This doesn't have a number on it, so I'm assuming it's all Mana Leech is instant. And if that's the case, having 100% of Leech be instant is, you know, very strong. It is paired with, you cannot recharge Energy Shield, and Mana Leech effects also recover Energy Shield. So if Mana Leech is instant and Mana Leech recovers Energy Shield, the idea of Eldritch Battery, when it's fixed and when it returns to early access, will probably be crazy, because what you can do is you can have your Mind Over Matter, which says all damage is taken from mana, and then you could stack a bunch of Energy Shield, and then whenever they fix Eldritch Battery, you could put your Energy Shield on your mana, making your Energy Shield plus your mana your life total. This is all theory crafted, of course. Currently, in the as of recording, Eldritch Battery has been known to be removed from early access as it needs to be reworked and fixed. And, you know, this is all speculation, which is one of the reasons, too, that I want to go Invoker right off the rip, because we don't have an Eldritch Battery. So just thinking about the things that we could do with Mana Leech being instant and using Mana Leech recovering Energy Shield, even without battery, you know, with Eldritch Battery, just sounds really cool, because, like, Mana Leech also recovers Energy Shields. So, like, even if we use, like, our life and our Energy Shield as a resource, and this also affects that, like, we just have this world where we can, like, stack things on life, stack things on life, scale our Energy Shield, and then use, like, Mind Over Matter, or maybe not even Mind Over Matter, but, like, there's just gonna be crazy different combinations. And, like, even thinking about just removing the Mind Over Matter from the equation and scaling Energy Shield, and this affecting Energy Shield might just be completely bonkers, like, just on its own. And the reason why I don't think Chayula is the pick off the rip, knowing these two knows, is I think getting Energy Shield gear to scale might be a little difficult, you know, from the get-go. Hard to say, but we'll see. Node 3 is really interesting to me. Node 3 says plus 10 the maximum chaos resistance, taking your 75 to 85. Our chaos resistance is doubled. Chaos resistance being doubled makes it really easy to get to that cap of chaos resistance. Traditionally in Path of Exile 1, hitting chaos resist cap is not the easiest thing, and this makes it a little bit more feasible to do. Going into Node 4 is really interesting to me. It says a 23% chance to gain 25% of damage with hits as extra chaos damage. That is a big number. 25%. I don't know if this is 1 hit, 2 hits, 5 hits. We don't really get access to be able to click the word hits. You can see hits is actually underlined right there. So I'm sure once we get in game and we can click on hits and see the little pop-up box, we can see how many hits this gives us and how long the gain is for. But the idea of that 1 in 4.5 hits, 1 in 5 hits, will just be a massive 25% more damage, or I don't know if more damage is the right word, but gain 25% of damage with hits as extra chaos damage sounds really strong. So 1 in every, like, 5-ish will hit really hard. 13% of the time, though, we gain 50% of damage, and 7% of the time we gain 100% of damage. So, like, can I just, like, trigger all 3 at the same time? Can I just run hot and just get a bunch of 7%ers in a row? Like, just the amount of damage that comes out of this node, depending on how hard we hit, sounds really good, and I'm very excited about it. Now going into node 5, Waking Dream, this gives us a skill called Into the Breach, and Into the Breach says creates a breach around you, allowing you to see nearby flames of Chayula. You are considered to be in a breach while this skill is active. Now, if breach rings are back and the effects are doubled inside of a breach like they are in PoE 1, this gives us a really good excuse to use breach rings on our Chayula Monk, depending on the cooldown of Into the Breach. The biggest problem is that I see right off the bat is this says you're in a breach. So does that mean that the breach opens on top of us and it opens up really slowly? Or does the breach immediately open up and the whole screen is surrounded as being in the breach? Like, there are some things that I think we need to play with Into the Breach in terms of like expanding the breach and seeing how it works to see if the skill is actually really good. What's really interesting are the flames of Chayula. This says red flames give you 7% of your maximum life is leeched. Blue flames give you leech 7% of your maximum mana, and purple flames of Chayula provide a stacking buff, granting 7% of damage as chaos damage for 5 seconds, stacking 10 times. That seems insane. Like insane, especially like if you can stack this relatively quickly, it's pretty cool. The biggest problem is we don't know how many flames are going to be in the breach. We don't know how long the flames are going to be active in the breach. We don't know if you can even get all 10 stacks in the breach. Are they scattered? Are they in a pile? Are there tons of flames? Are there a few flames? And it's going to be really interesting to see. But there's another node too that increases the effects and durations are doubled. So like, does that mean it's 140% damage as chaos? Is it like 14% of your maximum life is leeched to you? Sounds insane. Same with 14% mana, and all the effects be like, I could see a Chayula Monk walking into a boss encounter, starting the RP of the boss, cracking into the breach, picking up the flames, having 140% more damage as chaos, and then just looking at the boss and cracking it in a skull with a stick. You know what I mean? The whole like, you know, just whack, and you just boom, boss is phased. I know it's wishful thinking, but like in my world, that's what I see. And this is what I'm saying. Thinking about all this just makes it, to me, more sense to play this character with gear. I could be very, very, very wrong. Now, the last skills are Embrace the Darkness, Grasp of the Void, and Inner Silence, and these skills tie together really well. Embrace the Darkness says remove all spirit. Your mace maximum darkness is 100, and for each life or energy shield lost to damage reserves 1 darkness. Darkness reservation lasts 10 seconds, plus 5 maximum darkness per level. So that node in itself just tells us we can have base darkness of 100. Our darkness gets 5 per level. There's 100 levels, we get 500 darkness, but it really doesn't give us a whole lot else of what's really going on. The Grasp of the Void kind of fills in the gap here and says gain 1% of damage as extra chaos damage per 20 unreserved darkness. And if we have 600 darkness, 600 divided by 20 is a lot of extra chaos damage. So that sounds overall really good, but like, you know, reserve 1 darkness instead if possible for each life or energy shield lost. So like if I get hit for 500 health, is my whole darkness just filled, or is it every hit is 1 darkness? Because if I get hit 1 time and I'm just completely filled, it doesn't sound very good, but it might be really good on bosses with a lot of like dodge mechanics. So like there's a world where this is just like an absurd amount of damage as a bossing class. We'll have to really see how bosses pan out, if a lot of the damage from bosses is avoidable, and just kind of the overall feel of it. You see too, they even give us a node called Inner Silence, which reduces the darkness reservation duration. So from 10 seconds, it goes to 5. So there's a world where you just take this, have a bunch of damage, you're doing a boss mechanic or you're fighting a boss, you dodge, accidentally get hit, fill your darkness, and then for 5 seconds, you deal less damage, assuming you dodge. Darkness falls off, and then you hit again really hard. This could also be like really cool for like mapping, where you just like the first pack of mobs you run into, you just say flicker strike into, you hit them really hard, they all explode because you deal 4 billion extra damage, and then you just kind of keep bouncing around. Also, this reality rendering with the whole flicker strike monk just sounds insane too. I haven't really looked at a lot of the monk skills outside of what we've seen in the previews from GGG, so I'm really kind of going into the rest of the skills blind, but overall, I think both monks are just absolutely insane. And after playing a lot of games recently, I really want to dive into bossing, especially with the way that Jonathan talks about the bosses and the way that the bosses are presented. I really want to work my way into bossing. And I think my plan overall is I'm going to start an Invoker Monk. I'm going to take advantage of the elemental expression. I think I'm going to try to scale my crit and get this to like pop off alongside Sunder my enemies. I'm going to use this character to farm up a little bit of gear, step into the boss fight, see how the boss fights go, realize I really want to do the boss fights, and then snap reroll, go monk again, level the Chayula Monk, and then just really take advantage of all the extra damage. Now, there is a world where I get to the ascendancy chamber and I start ascending and I just look at this and I say, I got to do it, man. I got to pull the trigger. I'd like to convince myself I'm going to play Invoker. I have a feeling I might click Chayula. I have a feeling I might click Chayula, and then I'm kidding myself and I'm really gonna click Invoker. So I'm pretty torn on what I want to do. But overall, I wanted to talk about this. I wanted to showcase this, and I wanted to just give you guys a little bit of information because, like I said, picking your ascendancy in Path of Exile 2 hard locks you into the character. And until that's changed, we probably should make somewhat informed decisions going into Friday. I know a lot of you guys want to do it blind. I know a lot of you guys are still going to do it blind, but this, you know, might just, you know, help you just a teeny tiny bit as the most minor of spoilers. Friends, if you've enjoyed this and you are excited as I am, don't forget to the like button, the share button, the subscribe button, do all that fun things, turn on notifications. I will have tons of Path of Exile 2 content, especially over the weekend and the upcoming days as PoE 2 is released and we get our hands on it, we start playing it, and I'll be talking about all the updates and everything coming out for PoE 2's early access. But for now, friends, I'm going to, I can't wait, dude. We're 2 days out, man. We're 2 days, it's almost time. So friends, have an absolutely fantastic day. And if you're as excited as I am, please let me know. I'd love to hear from you guys. But friends, for now, I'll see you all in the next one.